Welcome to the Partnership for Environmental Education and Rural Health, the Doctor's Black Bag lecture series. Today's lecture is going to be on neutering, spaying, and castration. One of the goals in this lecture is to introduce you to the concept of spaying and castration of your pet and stress the benefits that are there for your pet. Why should we neuter our animals? Well, first thing, let's talk about neutering, the word neutering. Sometimes it's confusing to understand why we use the word neutering. What neutering means is to spay a female or castrate a male animal. And there's some great advantages in neutering. The very first one is disease prevention of your pet. Let's take the intact male cat. The intact male cat is the tomcat. And the tomcat, once he reaches puberty, will spend an inordinate amount of time searching for a female to breed. By doing that, he comes in contact with a whole host of other males and females, which causes fighting to happen, which causes injury. The bite wounds themselves transmit diseases like feline leukemia. So it's very important to understand by neutering or spaying your males and female cats, you decrease disease in that population. The next thing is the behavioral benefits. We talked about the male cat wandering. Well, when you castrate a male, he stays home, is what he does. But let's talk about the dog and the aggressive behavior and cat's aggressive behavior associated with testosterone. By castrating the male, the testosterone level drops, and some of the behavioral benefits of neutering is a decrease in aggression. The last thing is the prevention of overpopulation. And this is the focus of this because this is a really important part of this lecture series, understanding how overpopulation happens. The animal shelter statistics tells us that this is an overwhelming problem, and at the local animal shelters, the number of animals there is just exploding. There's an inordinate amount of unwanted animals that goes through your local animal shelter. This is important that this could be prevented by taking a responsible move of spaying and neutering your pets. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about is if the animal is not adopted, what happens to those unwanted animals? Those unwanted animals are euthanized. And that is becoming one of the biggest problems associated with this overpopulation that we're seeing is how do we handle the unwanted animal? The local shelters try their best, but unfortunately the population is too high. Animal shelter statistics tell us that this is an overwhelming problem. And if you look at the number of animals that are going into your local animal shelter, it is tremendous. It's an overwhelming problem. The problem comes is that not every animal is adopted in the United States. And unfortunately, if they're not adopted, most of those animals are euthanized. That's a really important part of this problem is the unwanted animal and what happens to those unwanted animals by not taking the responsible measure of spaying and neutering your animal. Lastly is that the role of neutering will reduce the increasing burden on animal shelters. I think this is really important because most of these shelters are maintained by taxpayers' dollars or by donation. And it's really important the work that they do that we get a handle on this overpopulation. So, what does it mean to neuter? Okay, we use neuters a lot of times meaning male castration also, but neutering can be spaying. And here on this website, we have a place where you could go on the web and see how a castration is done on a dog. One of the resistance about spaying and neutering your pet is about the myths that are out there. So let's talk about some of the myths that are out there. One of the myths is that the female dog should have her first litter before being spayed. And of course this is one of the biggest myths out there. In fact, medical evidence shows just the opposite. In fact, if we go in there and we spay a female early, before she goes through puberty, before she goes through her heat cycle, we can reduce the problems and the risk of diseases later in life, like mammary tumors. They're virtually eliminated in a female that is spayed prior to going through her first heat. Another one of those myths is that I own a purebred dog. Well, facts show us that 1 in 4 dogs going into a shelter is a purebred dog. So purebred dogs lead to overpopulation, and they should be neutered also, as well as the mixed breed dogs out there. One of the myths that's out there is my children should experience the miracle of birth. You know, I support this idea. I think that children should understand the miracle of birth. But with in this day, there's so much technology out there, videos of this, that there's no reason to own a dog or cat and have them have babies for this experience. There's lots of problems with this. It's because a lot of those animals end up being adding to the overpopulation problem. So instead, children should learn the real miracle is life, and that preventing the birth of some animals can save the life of others. And that's a really important message. One of the myths that's out there is it's too expensive to have your my pet spayed or neutered. And when you look at the cost of owning a pet, it's a very, very small amount of money that needs to pay, with great benefits associated with it. The benefits of disease prevention, like we talked before, behavioral changes that makes them a better pet, and lastly, decreasing the overpopulation of unwanted pets. That's a small price to pay as spaying and neutering a pet compared to those great health benefits and what the cost of having animals, unwanted animals out there in our population. One of the myths that's out there is I'll find good homes for all these puppies and kittens. And there's no doubt that that's a compelling argument. But the problem is that when puppies and kittens are placed in a home, in good homes, with good intentions by good pet owners, the problem is they're taking the place of the magnitude of all the overpopulation that's out there. We need to realize that this population goes well beyond our front door. And the responsible thing is to spay and neuter our pet. This problem of overpopulation happens 1 litter at a time. And that's an important process we need to understand. So let's talk about the U.S. pet statistics. You can see that there's 52 million dogs and 7 million cats living in United States families. For every human that's born, there's 7 puppies and kittens are born. And more than 12 million dogs and cats are euthanized in shelters every year. And millions more are dropped in rural or urban areas. The magnitude of this problem is tremendous. We talked about this earlier about purebred dogs, and that 25% of this population that we're talking about that are entering shelters are the purebred dogs. And 61% of the dogs entering the shelters, there's 61% of the dogs that are entering the shelters are being euthanized, and 75% of the cats. So, what's the cost? What's the cost of not neutering? Well, this increasing overpopulation of animals in our society. Well, the cost is approximately $100 to capture, house, feed, and eventually euthanize each of these animals. And this is the cost to me and you as taxpayers, or by donations, that eventually have to be paid. So, it's better to neuter and take the responsible step to neuter and spay your pets. So, what are some of the resources that are out there for you? Well, the internet provides these resources. And you can go to the National Council on Pet Population Study and Policy, and you can go to your local Humane Society or animal shelter and go to their website, or you can go to the Brazos Valley Animal Shelter that's on the screen there. And you can also go to the AVMA, that's the American Veterinary Medical Association, and see their spay and neuter brochure and print it and look at this and see what the overpopulation is to understand why it's so responsible to spay and neuter your pet. So we have some activities that we're going to do. So I'm going to go to the next series of tapes, and we will look at those.